Despite America having unprecedented and successful vaccination program, despite the fact that for almost 5 months, free vaccines have been available in 80,000 different locations, we still have nearly 80 million Americans who have failed to get the shot. And to make matters worse, there are elected officials actively working to undermine the fight against COVID-19. Instead of encouraging people to get vaccinated and mask up, they're ordering mobile morgues for the unvaccinated dying from COVID in their communities. This is totally unacceptable.
President Biden unveils a sweeping new COVID strategy heavily focused on vaccine mandates. The question is, will it help get the Delta variant under control? Plus, the nation's second largest school district has voted to require all students 12 and older be vaccinated against coronavirus. The question is, will other districts do the same? And the Justice Department is suing the state of Texas in an effort to try to block the nation's most restrictive abortion law. The question is, what will the court say? It's way too early for this. Good morning and welcome to Way Too Early, the show that is marking tomorrow's 20-year anniversary of September 11th. I'm Jonathan Lemire on this Friday, September 10th. We'll start with the news. President Biden announced new vaccine mandates for millions of Americans.
Over 200 million Americans have gotten at least one shot. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us.
The sweeping rules require any business with more than 100 workers to order employees to get the COVID-19 vaccine or be tested weekly. Any workers at health facilities that receive Medicare or Medicaid will also be required to be vaccinated. The president also announced he will mandate all administration employees and government contractors to get the vaccine without an option to be tested instead.
This is not about freedom or personal choice. It's about protecting yourself and those around you, the people you work with, the people you care about, the people you love. My job as president is to protect all Americans. The Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated. The bottom line, we're going to protect vaccinated workers from unvaccinated coworkers. We're going to reduce the spread of COVID-19 by increasing the share of the workforce that is vaccinated in businesses all across America.
The president also tackled the uptick in violence on airlines. He has directed the TSA to double fines for unruly passengers who fight over mask requirements on flights.
Tonight, I'm announcing that the Transportation Safety Administration, the TSA, will double the fines on travelers that refuse to mask. If you break the rules, be prepared to pay. And by the way, show some respect. The anger you see on television toward flight attendants and others doing their job is wrong. It's ugly.
But the president's plan is already seeing pushback. Republican Governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster, tweeted he will, quote, fight them to the gates of hell to protect the liberty and livelihood of every South Carolinian. And the Republican National Committee has already announced its intention to sue. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told reporters there will be a 75-day window for federal employees to get the vaccine. Joining us now, Washington correspondent covering health policy for the New York Times, Cheryl Gay-Stolberg. Cheryl, good morning. Thank you so much for being here. We've already seen, we've touched upon some of that pushback. Several businesses, often conservative-owned businesses, say they will sue over this mandate. Could they have a case? What's your assessment here?
So legal experts tell me that, in fact, the president has broad authority to do what he's doing, that under OSHA, the federal workplace safety laws, businesses are required to adhere to federal health safety standards, and that protecting the public from an infectious disease, a deadly infectious disease, is clearly within his rights. Now, of course, that's not going to stop the lawsuits, and things perhaps would get tied up in courts. But they do say he's on solid footing.
So what sort of timeline do you think we're looking at here? He said the Department of Labor was going to draw up these requirements. You said there are probably some legal challenges. Like, how is this going to play out? Are we talking weeks, months? What do you think?
Well, I think this is clearly not going to play out overnight. And the president himself said it would take some time to have some impact. And we already know that for federal workers, they will have a 75-day window with which to comply. So that's 2 months already for federal workers. Some 4 million workers are covered by that. I would imagine that it would take just as long to cover all of the healthcare workers. That's 17 million, and then another 100 million workers in private businesses. And I think that may be where we see even the biggest legal challenges.
And Cheryl, what could the next steps be? The president, certainly this is a significant enhancement of what he's trying to push and mandate and enforce, but there are some who said he could have even done more, perhaps like colleges or other institutions that receive federal funding. He'd have a say in that. What else could he do? What else is in his authority to get more Americans vaccinated?
Well, there are some other things that he can do. We've already seen at the outset of his administration, he required masks on interstate and international travel. So in airplanes and airports, on interstate buses, on interstate trains. There's no reason that he couldn't do that also with vaccines and require them as other countries have done. So this is very, very bold action by the president. What he has done is very, very expansive, much more so than he initially intended to do, and more so than any president really in modern history has done with respect to imposing vaccine mandates. But there are still things he could do. You
could see so much of it sort of fueled by the frustration of the situation. Senior White House aides I talked to last night, before and after the president's remarks, just said there was a sense of almost sort of disbelief, and that he was really giving voice to those who are already vaccinated, saying, like, look, we've done our part. Why can't you, the unvaccinated, do yours? Last one for you. We heard from the Republican governor of South Carolina looking to push back. What measures will they have? How do you see that playing out? Republicans governors, we know states have a lot of authority here too. What legal recourse do they have trying to block what Biden wants?
Well, I guess he can go to court. I mean, in the United States, vaccination is typically the province of the states. So it's states that impose, for instance, childhood vaccine mandates. So the governor of South Carolina or other Republican governors who want to block this can, presumably take the administration to court. But that said, this is a public health crisis. Republicans are casting this as a measure of freedom, but your freedom ends where my health safety begins. So that is the clash that we're going to see here. And in the past, the Supreme Court has really given wide latitude to the government to impose vaccine mandates in a public health crisis. That's been a long-standing precedent of the Supreme Court. So I guess they'll have to duke it out before the judges.
Cheryl Gay Stolberg of the New York Times, thank you so much. Such an important story. Please come back and keep us posted. The Attorney General is calling that restrictive new law that bans abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy unconstitutional. And the Justice Department is now suing the state of Texas over it. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams with more from the DOJ.
Barely a week after the law took effect, and after the Supreme Court declined to block it, the Justice Department took swift action to fight it in court, concerned that the law amounts to a near-total ban on abortion in Texas.
This kind of scheme to nullify the Constitution of the United States is one that all Americans, whatever their politics or party, should fear.
Texas designed the law to make it hard to challenge in court, a ban on abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, earlier than many women know they're pregnant, but it does not make abortion a crime. Instead, it says anyone other than a state official can file a lawsuit for $10,000 against anybody who performs an abortion or helps make it possible. The Justice Department says the law denies women the right to seek an abortion, deprives the federal government of the power to enforce that right, and blocks delivery of federal health care. But legal experts say fighting the law won't be easy.
The question is whether an order blocking the state from doing anything to enforce SB 8. We'll also block private parties from enforcing SB 8. We'll also block copycat lawsuits by other anti-abortion advocates. And that's the tricky part here.
Justice Department officials say they're eager to go to court now and try to stop this Texas law before other states get the same idea and try to do the same thing. Jonathan?
NBC's Pete Williams, thank you so much for that. Still ahead, tomorrow marks 20 years since the September 11th terror attacks. Our friend Willie Geist will join the conversation from Lower Manhattan. Plus, we'll speak to a former New York City firefighter who helped dig through the debris at Ground Zero in the aftermath of the attacks. Those stories and much more when we come back.
Looking for more Dateline mysteries? Peacock's on the case with a new streaming channel, Dateline 24/7. With current season episodes and top picks from the archives, Dateline 24/7 is all Dateline all the time. Plus, with Peacock's Dateline collections, you can easily find top episodes in themes like love triangles, greed, and more.
To get started, go to peacocktv.com and sign up for free.
Hey, it's Chris Hayes. This week on my podcast, Why Is This Happening? I'll be talking with Bloomberg Autos and tech reporter Dana Hull on the electric vehicle revolution and who and what is driving it.
Everyone thought that Tesla was going to fail or go bankrupt, and there was all this scoffing about their ambitions in Detroit and Germany. And, people just thought that Tesla was this kind of crazy Silicon Valley company trying to do the impossible. And, look where we are now. Tesla has a larger market value than any automaker in the world. Elon Musk is always neck and neck with Jeff Bezos as being the richest person in the world. And the cars are real, and now every automaker is basically trying to come out with an electric car. So it's been this real shift, and it's really unfolded over the past decade.
That's this week on Why Is This Happening? Search for Why Is This Happening wherever you're listening right now and subscribe.
Before they take on Republicans, Democrats are still wrangling among themselves over President Biden's agenda. House Majority Whip Congressman Jim Clyburn said in an interview yesterday that there is room to negotiate the $3.5 trillion reconciliation package. It's a sign that Democrat leadership acknowledges that the price tag may be too high for some key Democrats to support.
Somewhere between 1.5 and 3.5, there is $2 trillion. Those $2 trillion are there. And I think that there is a lot of room for people to sit down and negotiate. It may be when you're sitting around the table, you may not need $3.5 trillion to do what the president wants done and what the country needs done.
Moderate senators Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin have already said they would not vote for a spending package that large. Democrats will need their entire caucus to vote in favor to ensure passage. Certainly some progressives will demand the $3.5 trillion. That price tag stay intact. Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney continues to stand up to Donald Trump. The former president endorsed her Republican primary challenger and called Cheney a warmonger and a disloyal Republican, adding that she was the Democrats' #1 provider of sound bites. In response, Cheney tweeted, "Here's a soundbite for you. Bring it." Cheney has been one of the most prominent Republicans to criticize Trump for the January 6th insurrection and also voted to impeach him for his role in it. She has also said she would work to ensure he isn't elected if he runs for president again in 2024. Former President Trump has vowed to work to get Cheney voted out of office. D.C. police officer Michael Fanone has returned to work 8 months after fighting the pro-Trump mob during the January 6th attack at the Capitol. Fanone was beaten and shocked unconscious during the insurrection and suffered severe physical injuries, including a concussion. According to the Washington Post, his heart stopped beating for a moment. A rioter took his badge and radio, and others tried to grab his firearms while shouting, "Kill him with his own gun." Fanone, a 20-year veteran, was assigned to the Technical and Analytical Services Bureau, which compiles and analyzes statistics used to develop crime-fighting strategies. D.C. police said one department officer injured in the riot remained on sick leave, and 4, including Fanone, had returned to modified duties. Meanwhile, in an interview with NPR, the Supreme Court's most senior liberal justice, Stephen Breyer, had this to say about his possible retirement.
I'm only going to say that I'm not going to go beyond what I've previously said on the subject. And that is that I do not believe I should stay on the Supreme Court or want to stay on the Supreme Court until I die. And when exactly I should retire or will retire has many complex parts to it. I think I'm aware of most of them, and I am and will consider them.
Progressive Democrats have been vocal in wanting the 83-year-old Breyer to retire to make way for a younger liberal justice while the party maintains slim control of the Senate confirmation process. President Biden will visit California on Monday to throw his support behind Governor Gavin Newsom just a day before the state's recall election. Biden and Newsom will appear at the governor's final rally in Long Beach, just outside of Los Angeles, Monday night, to urge voters to keep Newsom in office. Newsom is facing a recall over his handling of the pandemic, and if he loses, a Republican could take his place. The rally is part of a multi-stop trip to the West by Biden, his first, and it will also include events in Idaho and Colorado. Still ahead, the 2021 NFL season gets underway, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady, well, he proves he's still got it and looks good while doing it. Sports is next.
What does her ascension mean to you?
Ask a simple question.
Everything. She is the first woman of color vice president.
Ask everyone you know what matters to them and why.
Let's be clear. This isn't about fraud.
Work the angles.
Tonight here on MSNBC, we've got a special coming up.
Question authority.
What specifically are you going to do?
Walk me through your process.
Care about what you find.
If not now, when? And if not us, the free press, then who?
And if what you discover doesn't match your expectations,
can you fact check this for us?
Keep asking yourself hard questions.
Are you confident in that?
Be tough on the answers.
It's just not true.
Favor facts over conspiracies.
What should American citizens know?
Rely on experts, not influencers.
They're now going to debate it again and vote again.
And trust standards over hearsay. At MSNBC, this is what we do, and this is who we are.
At the age of 44, Brady steps up, avoids the rush, throws, caught, touchdown, Antonio Brown.
Welcome back. Time now for sports and the NFL regular season kickoff. That's Buccaneers receiver Antonio Brown hauling in a 47-yard touchdown pass thrown by quarterback Tom Brady to put the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ahead of the Dallas Cowboys before halftime. Brady would eventually win the shootout with Cowboys QB Dak Prescott, finishing with 379 yards through the air and 4 touchdowns in a game that saw 5 lead changes. Down 1 point with about 90 seconds to play in the fourth, Brady would drive the Bucs into field goal position and leave it to Ryan Suckup to kick the game winner. The Bucs began their title defense with a 31-29 victory. A pair of unseeded teenagers will face off in the U.S. Open's women's final. Canadian Leylah Fernandez, who turned 19 years old on Monday, advanced last night after battling through a semifinal filled with momentum swings to earn a 3-set victory over second-ranked Aryna Sabalenka. That match was followed by a straight-set win for 18-year-old Emma Raducanu of Britain, who, appearing in just her second major tournament, is now the first qualifier to reach a Grand Slam final in the professional era after defeating 17-seeded Maria Sakkari of Greece. Raducanu and Fernandez will return to Arthur Ashe Stadium tomorrow for the first major final between two teens since the 1999 U.S. Open, won by then 17-year-old Serena Williams. Time now for the weather. Let's go to meteorologist Bill Cairns for the forecast. Bill, what do we got?
Hey, so a pretty nice hot summer weekend is coming our way. We have we're at the peak of tropics, so there's a lot going on. Larry is safely off the East Coast, still a hurricane. The remnants of Mindy is off the southeast coast, and last night we had Hurricane Olaf made landfall near Cabo San Lucas near Mexico. So there's a lot of areas of interest out there. The only one of great concern is will be a new system forming heading towards possible Texas in the days ahead. That won't be towards the end of the weekend, the beginning of next week, and it doesn't look to be a big strong storm, but it could bring a lot of rain. So for today's forecast, just as gorgeous as it gets in the northeast, enjoy that. The southeast, not too bad either. The hot weather continues. Yesterday it was 111 in Phoenix. It's going to be 107 today. More record heat is possible Saturday from Texas through Kansas. Denver is going to have a chance at a couple record highs over the next couple of days. You notice there's not a lot of wet weather out there. It's not until Sunday that we see some of that tropical rainfall coming into areas of Texas and Louisiana. Louisiana. So it looks like a sizzling September summer weekend, almost from coast to coast. And Jonathan, we'll end with this. We found out yesterday from our climate scientists that this summer tied the 1936 Dust Bowl summer as the hottest summer ever recorded in the lower 48, and 5 states out west had their hottest summer ever recorded. So that shouldn't surprise anyone with all the fire news we've been talking about and the epic drought in the west. But tying the dubious 1936 summer, we keep setting these records. Climate change at work.
Climate change at work, and that punishing heat certainly a factor with those wildfires. And that's part of the president's trip out west. He'll be making a stop in Idaho to survey the situation there. Bill Cairns, thank you so much. Still ahead, a look at the sweeping new vaccine mandate put in place by the Los Angeles County School District and what it can mean for other districts across the country. But before we go to break, we want to pose that immortal question. Why are you awake? Email your reasons to waytooearly@msnbc.com or tweet me at John Lemire. Leave out the H in my name, but use the hashtag #WayTooEarly. We'll read our favorite answers later in the show, particularly if they're about the Yankees getting swept at home by the Blue Jays. Welcome back to Way Too Early. It's just before 5:30 on the East Coast, 2:30 out west. I'm Jonathan Lemire. As President Biden announced sweeping new vaccine mandates, Los Angeles became the first major school district in the United States to require the vaccination for eligible students. Under the new regulation, all children 12 and older in LA public schools must be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 by January 10th in order to attend in-person classes. With more than 600,000 students enrolled, it is the second largest school district in the country. More than 5,000 students in Los Angeles County have tested positive for COVID since the start of the school year. Meanwhile, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease doctor, warns that Americans are now getting infected with COVID-19 at 10 times the rate needed to end the pandemic. In an interview with Axios, Fauci said, quote, "Right now, we're still in pandemic mode because we have 160,000 new infections a day. That's not even modestly good control, which means it's a public health threat." He added, "In a country of our size, you can't be hanging around and having 100,000 infections a day. You've got to get well below 10,000 before you start feeling comfortable." Fauci also said that the longer it takes to end this pandemic phase, the bigger the chance we'll end up with a monster variant that not only eludes vaccines, but also is dangerously transmissible. Joining us now, founder and CEO of Advancing Health Equity, Dr. Uche Blackstock. She is an MSNBC medical contributor, we are happy to say. Despite Dr. Fauci's warnings, Uche, thousands of students are set to return to the classrooms with the start of this new school year. Most of the country's back in school. The nation's largest district, New York City, goes back on Monday. What are your main concerns right now as we're seeing students enter classrooms from coast to coast? Should school districts be implementing stricter measures, including vaccine mandates like we're seeing in Los Angeles?
So good morning. Thank you so much for having me. And this question also is very important to me personally because I have children starting in New York City public schools next Monday. So what we know is that a multi-layered strategy is what keeps schools safe. I will say that, community transmission levels are also really important. So that's another reason why we need to make sure we get those cases down outside of school. But inside schools, I have concerns. We have this Delta variant that's highly transmissible, more infectious, and schools are returning to full in-person learning. And so in order to stay safe, they have to be able to follow all of these layers of the strategy. So it's universal masking. I think vaccines for anyone who's eligible. And I do agree with the LA vaccine requirement for students over 12 years old. Really, the only way to keep schools safe is to vaccinate as many people as possible. We know that physically distancing is important. Ventilation does not get enough attention. We need to make sure that schools have enough state federal support to ensure ventilation in classrooms is key, and testing. And we see that President Biden's strategy to increase rapid testing and testing in schools, will be key to making sure that they're safe.
So I wanted to indeed return to President Biden's new plan. We outlined it earlier in the show, which includes the testing and some sweeping vaccine mandates. Wanted to get your reaction to it in two ways. First of all, what's your sense in the health community, those you've been talking to, as to whether, what's the reaction to his new plan? But also, do you think it goes far enough? Will this be enough to get this pandemic at least somewhat under control?
So what I will say is definitely I think the vaccine requirements as part of this strategy are well overdue. We saw the vaccinations coming to a slowdown in this country. We knew that vaccine requirements would be needed. And so I'm glad to see that will cover about 100 million workers. I think absolutely healthcare workers, there's no doubt it's a non-negotiable. They need to be vaccinated. But I also do think that it can go further. I think that I saw hardly anything in the strategy about masking policies. We know that, as Dr. Fauci said, we have over 160,000 infections a day. We need to get those cases down. And it's going to take a while for those vaccinations to start working, about 6 to 8 weeks. And so we need other mitigation strategies in place. So masking is important. We need federal guidance around indoor capacity restrictions, and we need to be able to tie them to certain metrics like hospitalizations, vaccination rate in the area. And we also need more support for school and workplace infrastructure like ventilation. So those are the things I wish I would have seen as well. I think this is a step in the right direction. Will it certainly end the pandemic? I'm not sure at this point.
Dr. Blackstock, one more quick one for you. Could you just give us a quick version of 30,000 feet view, if you will, of the state of the pandemic right now? We are seeing in some of these states where the Delta variant had been surging slightly downward trends. That's a hopeful sign. What do you make of that? And are there any areas of the country right now that we should be worried about a potential rise?
Right. So we actually have seen this in other parts of the world where the Delta variant has spread. Like, cases have gone up very quickly and then come down without really any explanation or intervention. But the concern I have is that we're heading into the fall, colder weather. People will be indoors more often. And so without a doubt, we are going to see another surge if interventions don't happen. And so my concern is that we're going to see another surge again after this, and it's just a matter of time.
Dr. Uche Blackstock, thank you so very much, even for that rather sobering message. Still ahead, the totally different way COVID is being traced at the nation's airports. Way Too Early is back in just a minute. Time now for something totally different. A new layer of COVID safety is being unleashed at Miami International Airport, as 2 coronavirus-sniffing dogs are part of a new pilot program for employees at one of the nation's busiest airports. Cobra and One Betta, a 7-year-old dog trained to detect the presence of the coronavirus. The pups sniff the face coverings of employees passing through a security checkpoint before their shift. If the virus is detected, that individual will be asked to take a rapid test. So far, the dog's precision rivals most tests with an accuracy rating of an astounding 96 to 99%. Beyonce and Jay-Z are expanding their partnership with Tiffany & Co. with the launch of a new scholarship program for students at select historically black colleges and universities pursuing creative fields. The About Love Scholarship Program is supported by the STARS charities Bay Good and the Sean Carter Foundation. Tiffany & Co. has pledged $2 million in scholarship funding for students in the arts at Lincoln University, Norfolk State University, Bennett College, University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, and Central State University. Applications are open through the end of September. The Amazing Spider-Man, meanwhile, is reaching new heights. A copy of the 1962 comic book featuring Spider-Man's first appearance has sold at Heritage Auctions for $3.6 million in what is believed to be the highest price for a comic book ever sold. The issue, Amazing Fantasy number 15, written by Stan Lee, went for just 12 cents back in the day. It tells the story of Peter Parker's transformation into the web-slinging hero we all know and love. The sale soars ahead of a 1938 Superman comic sold earlier this year for $3.25 million. Still ahead, On the eve of the 20th anniversary of the attacks on 9/11, one of our next guests is highlighting some of the heroes of that horrific day. Way Too Early is coming right back. Welcome back. As we approach the 20-year anniversary of the September 11th terror attacks, America will pause to honor all those killed on that horrific day and reflect on how its aftermath has come to shape our nation. Let's bring in our own Willie Geist, who returns to the 5 a.m. by joining us live from Lower Manhattan. Willie, great to see you, sir. Can you set the scene for us at the start of this solemn anniversary weekend?
Yeah, John, good morning. The man you cover every day, President Joe Biden, will become the fourth American president to attend one of these solemn remembrances tomorrow on the 20th anniversary of September 11th. He will be here one of three stops, as you've been reporting, along the day, along that 20th anniversary. He'll visit the Pentagon. He'll visit Shanksville, Pennsylvania as well. There will be the moment of silence at 8:46 here at Ground Zero. That was the time when the first plane, American Airlines Flight 11, hit the North Tower and began one of the darkest days in American history. As we remember, and we'll go through the politics of it, the end of the war in Afghanistan, the declassification of documents around Saudi Arabia's possible involvement. That came last week. But this again and always on this time of year is about remembering those lost, nearly 3,000 of them in America. And among them, a man named T.J. Hargrave. He worked on the 105th floor of the North Tower for Cantor Fitzgerald. His daughter Amy was 4 years old that day. She's now 24 years old, and I got a chance to speak to her. She works at the 9/11 museum behind me. How are you doing 20 years later?
I'm okay. I think it's the best way to put it. I think that's what's so hard about the 20th year is looking back and being like, all right, I was 4 years old when this happened. I'm now 24. What milestones did he miss? He missed graduations and new jobs and just a new dog and just all those new things. But it's okay. I feel like coming here really helps just the grieving process.
You know, John, hers is kind of an amazing story. Amy was grappling with the grief, obviously, the understandable grief throughout her life. She was having a lot of trouble with it. And her family said, what if you went and worked at the National 9/11 Museum? Be a volunteer, be a docent, go talk about your dad every day. Tell strangers, tell tourists about who your dad is and what kind of life he lived. And that's what she's done. And it's really helped her. And hers is kind of the story of a generation that doesn't remember it, perhaps wasn't even alive for it, and now is being taught the story of 9/11 and everything that came after it as a page in a history book rather than a memory and the trauma that we all shared. So we're going to get into much more of that on Morning Joe, talk about some of the things they're doing at the museum to make that more than a history page and to make it the memory that we all have, John.
Yeah, that's a really powerful story. Willie Geist in Lower Manhattan, thank you, and we will indeed see you again in a few minutes on Morning Joe. Joining us now, former New York City firefighter Niels Jorgensen. He is the host of the 20 for 20 podcast, which launched this week and tells 20 heroic stories about 9/11 for the 20th anniversary. Niels, thank you so much for being here and for putting together this important project. Tell us about, if you will, some of the episodes that have already been released.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me, sir. We're doing 20 episodes of 20 special people that were associated with 9/11. Some still alive, unfortunately, some who have passed from illnesses that they received from being at Ground Zero, and some who passed away on that fateful day. I just want to say I have so much respect for a young lady like Amy. My daughter is also a redhead, and she's 24. And luckily, I came home and watched her grow up. So I'm so sorry about Amy's dad, and God bless her for working at the museum and preventing this from being forgotten. That's the main focus of the 20 for 20 podcast. Many responders like myself and many military personnel feel that this day has been somewhat forgotten. From what we can understand, there's about 50% of the schools that do not teach anything about 9/11 in their curriculum. So we would like to bring these stories out and possibly change that. This is one of the largest events in American history when we feel that it's being brushed away. We also like to draw out the special people that came to help us. We feature some of them, and unfortunately, folks who work for the Red Cross, they're sick as well. One very special lady, Sonia, that we'll feature in a few weeks. We call them the Angel Ladies, who came to give us food and comfort and just help the rescue and recovery workers through some very, very long shifts of duty.
Certainly.
One of the special stories we have is about a gentleman named Mac Hanna, and Mac was an engineer working in the building that day, and he basically assisted with his coworkers in the rescuing of dozens of people that were trapped on the upper floors. And his boss asked him to escort an older gentleman who was 89 down 78 floors to the West Side Highway for medical assistance. And Mac and this gentleman, Mo, actually stopped on the 21st floor and encountered Captain Patrick Brown from Ladder Company 3. And Captain Brown unfortunately passed as he proceeded up to the upper floors to continue rescues. But he spoke quickly with Mac and he asked him about the building systems and the firefighting systems. And then he said, you have to continue. Mac wanted to actually stay on the 21st floor and await medical help. And Captain Brown said, no, sir, it will not be coming. You need to leave. You need to get out. Mac and Mo were considered the last two people to actually evacuate the North Tower just prior to it collapsing. Mac was literally witnessed on video carrying Mo. He actually carried him down the last bunch of floors. And as they got to the other side of the West Side Highway, the building came down just after they had left.
There's simply extraordinary moments of sacrifice and heroism, and I'm sure, certainly emotional for you to be dealing with it, but in putting these important stories out there. The 20 for 20 podcast can be heard on Apple, Spotify, and Google. Niels Jorgensen, thank you so much for your work in doing this. Up next, a look at the Axios One Big Thing, and coming up on Morning Joe, where the nation stands 20 years after the attacks on 9/11, which spurred America's war on terror. We'll hear from Homeland Security Secretaries past and present, former Secretary Jay Johnson and current Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. They're both guests this morning. Plus, the latest on the situation in Afghanistan following the U.S. military's exit. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby will join the conversation. Morning Joe is just moments away.
Go beyond the headlines with MSNBC Daily, a collection of written perspectives to help you better understand the issues of our time. Read now at msnbc.com.